What is up, DTube? What is up, Steam blockchain? So today I want to talk about something that I was looking a little bit. I was looking just a little bit on it today, and that was rare metals, precious metals, and just putting it into my awareness. So we know in this space of digital coins, we can say that the right now most people are not considering it that much. I don't think so. Many people that are in the digital game about how they're gonna store their value in the future, but if we look at it from the long-term perspective of a longer time frame of, let's say, 10 years or 20 years, once we get up to those time frames, it sort of seems like eventually someone is going to diversify. Right. And what I think is going to happen is that, I mean, we take a look at things a person can invest in. Okay, so eventually when they have all the tokens that they need to do whatever task, and eventually you're going to be able to get a lot of goods or services even with just a small amount of tokens. So people, I think, are gonna look for something with more weight. And we just take a look at the physical stuff that a person can have a look at, then clearly gold and silver gets kind of interesting when it's gonna be more accessible for people. So right now it's probably kind of scary for most people. It's not that accessible because it hasn't entered their consciousness or awareness that once their crypto goes up a lot in value, that they are gonna sit on this excess in value that they probably not gonna have any good clue of what to do with. So for example, it doesn't really matter what project it is, I think, because we humans just, when we have a lot of value of something, we lose perspective, right? So with a lot of token projects, what I think is gonna happen is people are just gonna remove the excess, and then they're just gonna have a little bit of each of what they find interesting, and then they're probably gonna look at, a lot of people eventually is probably gonna look at gold and silver. Now they can also look at other stuff, of course, like real estate and things like that, but I think when accessibility on gold and silver, when it gets easier to access, and what I mean with easier to access, I mean, for example, with token projects that will be backed by gold and silver, so you can redeem the tokens to gold and silver. When that gets more accessible, when it gets easier to get those tokens, and research projects that are doing those things, I think that more people eventually are gonna get into that game because the barriers of entry has lowered, sort of. And it's kind of this interesting thing, a very interesting thing actually, to consider how everyone is involved in value games. So first we have the mainstream that are not that aware that fiat currencies, there's basically no limit to how much is being printed, but it's kind of unfair in many ways. It's kind of unfair in many ways because people should be aware of trying to protect their value in whatever ways that comes up. Whatever it is, digital tokens, gold or silver, eventually it's great. Ideally you have a situation where everyone is owning not just the digital token, but that they can micro own some gold or silver or some other precious metal. They might also become, or there also might be other rare, precious physical things that people are gonna look at, or new potential opportunities they're gonna show up. But it's nice to see how this space is gonna become more open to the mainstream masses eventually. And there's some interesting things about this crypto space also. For example, I saw some of the main people with XRP, they basically talked a little bit about that they think that fiat currencies are going to be here for 20 to 30 years in the future. And for me, when I look at how fast technology is being developed, how fast it is like skyrocketing with an exponential curve, I don't even know if it's gonna last for 5 more years. Because when smartphones just becomes more powerful, more computing power, more data processing, I don't see why anyone would keep using something that is just ancient. And then people must, or not people must, but it just feels like, yeah, digital tokens are fine and it's kind of cool and all, but when it comes to the physical, yeah, a person can get like, they can rent some place and they kind of own it, or they can even buy a house, or maybe they can buy some painting or something. There are also all these sort of interesting opportunities, but in many ways I sort of feel that a lot of people jump into like the physical space of like, if let's take real estate and own that, it sort of feels like that is going to be on its way out, just because everything is going towards rent, and the kind of the place, the location, the physical location of a place doesn't seem to be as important because we have technology and smartphones. So it really seems to come down eventually to gold and silver, precious metals. And I mean, digital tokens are probably just going to be a little bit of a side thing compared to the precious metals. People are talking about Bitcoin as digital gold, and I'm not quite sure if I agree with that with any of these digital tokens, because digital tokens for me is just, it's a cool way of exchanging value and goods and services, but it's not really gold. Even if a person says digital gold, I don't really see a difference between Bitcoin and this Steam token, or I mean all these various token projects that are out there. For me, it sort of is the same, all of it. It's blockchain, it's ones and zeros, it's being moved around, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool how it opens up a bit more how people are looking at things and opportunities and things like that. But gold and silver is really going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if it can become more mainstream in many ways. I'm not really sure. I mean, it depends. The human consciousness, it likes, or a lot of humans likes to come to conclusions about stuff. And I feel that they sort of close down a lot of possibilities then. So they have made a lot of conclusions about life, and this is something that we see with, for example, money, that people think money is actually a thing, and they don't know that it's something that we sort of invented, and the idea of money, that it actually is trade between two people or two companies or whatever. And I'm not really sure if it's a good question. The challenge in many aspects comes to make people feel more inclusive. Because in many aspects, other people, it sort of is you. I mean, we're living in an intelligent cosmos, and what's going to be important is that everyone has long-term value, and that it's not just a niche for a few people. It sort of must be open for everyone, the opportunities, right? Then of course people are gonna do different decisions in life and all that, and that's fine. But yeah, gold and silver are very interesting aspects, especially when they're gonna have a token. And what I mean is, a person, for example, sends Ethereum to a token that is a legal tender to be able to redeem gold or silver. That might sound like a small thing, but it's really not a small thing, because it makes the whole process way less scary for a lot of people. It really does lower the barriers of entry to more rare, scarce, physical stuff, right? So it's just gonna be interesting to see how this whole space develops. People's view of what the value is, and seeing where human consciousness takes things. And it's gonna be interesting, because I mean, in the past, or for most of human history, people haven't had that many opportunities to, like, how they basically are storing their value. That has mainly changed the last 200 to 300 years, when we have gotten more opportunities. So even if we go back a little bit further, regular humans wasn't even allowed to have a bank account. So when people got access to that, it was sort of liberation for them. And now we're seeing, for example, tokens. People sort of see that, well, that sort of seems like liberation. And eventually it's probably going to be taken a step further when people can use tokens to get back again to maybe physical assets like gold and silver. And there are also a bunch of other interesting assets, which other precious metals that I saw from Russia, for example, which is assets, like there are all kinds of various metals that people never really heard about. And it gets interesting when this have the potential to basically enter a human's consciousness. So it's going to be interesting to see also the various new business models all this will develop. Because one big aspect of all of this is obviously that people have more free time. When people have more free time, to not be bored, they sort of look at things and see, well, what is there to do? Is there something that can be done here? And as I talked a little bit earlier in this video, is I sort of feel that, well, and I can also see it on a person, if a person is, for example, a whale in a token project, it's usually, even if they don't, maybe they don't even want it to happen, but usually what happens if people turn lazy and they lose perspective on things. And this is something that we've been seeing also in other aspects, because, for example, on YouTube, if a person has a lot of views, has a lot of followers, it sort of makes many times a person quite lazy. And it's kind of sad actually, because they lose a lot of motivation, and that's why people are probably gonna move value around a lot. Or the good thing with that, with the moving value around a lot, is that people can get back motivation, because they can make it so they never really have too much of something, so they can always increase novelty in trying to expand what they know, and look and actually genuinely look at trying to challenge themselves to look at various projects or various opportunities in life, and just test or try to test out something new. And already the aspect of digital tokens, that is something that's very new for many people. And gold and silver is probably going to be very new also for a lot of people. And it's also this thing when people are going to dive into, try a little bit of some projects here and some investments here and there, and then how they can sort of try to combine various things that they learn from various projects, various things that they thought they never would do. And if you combine this unique experience that a person can get from all that they do, they might come up with something even more original that can be helpful. It's very easy to get into a routine of just doing the same thing. It's really about finding that sweet spot of just trying to do something, just try to do something a bit different and constantly tweak things. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. It's just interesting, gold and silver, and that the key thing, what's interesting is obviously that it's something physical. And yes, paper money is on its way out, so that sort of representation of something, it sort of is going away. And when you can hold something and it's physical and you know it has some real value, not paper money, some precious metal, that can be really cool. That can be a really cool experience for a lot of people. We sort of lost that in many ways. The physical, cool, rare stuff, we sort of lost that aspect in many ways, but it might be on its way back. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit all over the place here, and I'm probably going to talk more about it in the future, because it is an interesting topic. Yeah, because I mean, when we're doing everything digital, there is a lot of value lost in you want to feel something, you want to hold something, right? There is something cool with that. And yeah, so yeah, have an awesome day YouTube, have an awesome day Steam, blockchain. Now I'm gonna keep drinking my coffee. Bye bye.